All right, 2.2, add real numbers. So yesterday we worked with all different kinds of numbers. Worked with whole numbers, integers, rational numbers, and we talked about obviously real numbers a little bit with that, just as like the generic thing. But these first few problems that are in this section, basically they give you something like -5 plus 3, and they want you to draw a number line, plot the points, and then you can go ahead. And then say like how much, like count up how many are between it, and that's how they want you to add. I feel like we don't need to do it that way because I think that y'all are capable of adding numbers without doing it on a number line. So I'm going to show you how to do it just for reference, but I'm okay with you just adding them and not doing the number line thing. But we'll talk about that in a second. Let's see, some rules for addition. The first thing, to add two numbers with the same sign, add their absolute values the sum has the same sign as the numbers added. So what I mean by that is if I had something like 9 plus 6, that is equal to what? 15. So both of these were positive numbers. I added them together, and so the answer is positive. But if instead I had -8 minus 7, or let me write it this way just for the sake of the book, plus -7 is how the book writes it, what is that?
-15.
-15. So we take the absolute value of both numbers, so we would treat this as if it was 8 plus 7, and that would give us 15. And then the sign on both of those was negative, and so we put the negative on there. The other thing is to add two numbers with different signs. Subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater absolute value. The sum has the same sign as the number with the greater absolute value. So examples with this one, if I have -10 plus 3, then what I do is I think about this as 10 minus 3, which is 7. And then I choose the sign of the higher number, so this would end up being -7. And you don't have to write it like I did in green. That's just like if you need that for like reference to look at if I had something like 16 minus 5, or the way the book writes it is plus a negative 5, then that would be equal to 11, because it's 16 minus 5, and then it's the sign of the higher number, which is 16, so it's positive. Yes.
So on the example, do we have to write down, actually on the problems we have to write, can we just do that in our head, like the addition?
If it just asks you, like, 7 minus 4, you can just tell me that that's 3. You don't need to write anything else for it. I would consider that mental math. Let me see if they're done in the computer lab. They're not. They're still in there. Okay. Some properties of addition. So some of the questions are going to ask you which property is being used in that particular statement, so that's why you need to be aware of these. The first one is the commutative property. Which is, or says, the order in which you add two numbers does not change the sum. So this would be, if I have A plus B, that's equal to B plus A. If you want to pull your desk out in the hall so you don't have to keep waiting, you can. And just put your desk like right in the hallway right there in the corner if you want. Or if you want to wait, I don't care. Okay. All right, the next property is the associative property. Which says the way you group three numbers in a sum does not change the sum. So if I had in parentheses A plus B, and then outside the parentheses plus C, this is equal to A plus in parentheses B plus C. So the only thing that's really like specific about this one is, or like the whole big thing with this one is that in parentheses, obviously in PEMDAS we do parentheses stuff first. So we would have like A plus B and then.
It's finished.
Okay, thank you. You can go in there if you want. So you would have in parentheses like A plus B is what you do first, and then add C, and then on the other side you would add B plus C, and then you would add it to A. And all this is saying that no matter which order you do it in, since everything's being added, you're going to get the same answer. The next one is the identity property, which says the sum of a number and 0 is the number. So all that means is anything added to 0 is equal to itself. So if I have A plus 0, that's equal to 0 plus A, which is the commutative property that says I can do it either way. And ultimately that is equal to A. And then the last property specifically is the inverse property. The sum of a number and its opposite is 0. So that says A plus negative A is equal to negative A plus A, which would just be equal to 0. So if I take the number and add its opposite, which is just the negative of that number, or if I started with the negative, the positive of that number, then I add those two together, then that's just equal to 0. Something that ties into this, these properties, but isn't directly listed as a property, the number 0 is the additive identity and then the opposite of a number is called its additive inverse. Ultimately, when we do this stuff with multiplying as well, we'll have a multiplicative identity and a multiplicative inverse, so that's why I'm pointing out that these are the additive identity and additive inverse, because it's different when we get into that. All right, getting into some problems. So 3 through 11 say to use a number line. You don't have to. Okay, I'm going to show you the first one with a number line, and after that, we're just going to do mental math on that. Okay, if you want to do the number line, that's fine, but that seems like a lot more work to be able to do what we could literally do otherwise. So, I've got to start with, let's see, number 6, 5 plus negative 10. Now, I'm sure that you can do that in your head and tell me that the answer is what? Negative 5. But I'm going to show you on a number line, so I'm going to draw one here for us. So, all right. I may have gone a little excessive on the sides here. So what we do is we start at whatever the first number given is. So in this case, it's positive 5. So I start here. And then I'm going to add negative 10. So I'm subtracting 10. So I literally just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that tells me that my answer is -5.
So you really don't even need to do the number line.
Correct. That's why I'm telling you. I'm showing you how to do it so you've seen it. This is more like if you've never added positive and negative numbers together. I can see where this is beneficial, but I feel like we're past that point in this class where we don't need to do that. So I'm going to let you do it using mental math. Or if there are numbers that you're still not super sure about, you can do it like, by hand with the little chart thingy is fine. But basically for 3 through 23, you can just use mental math if you're able to do that. So 12 through 23 is just find the sum, which can be mental math. So these problems won't have a lot of work with them for that reason. Number 8, -8 plus a -2 is what?
-10.
-10. So we add the numbers together and we keep the sign since they both have the same sign. So that is -10. So these ones officially move into just find the sum. These ones don't even say anything about a number line. -2.4 plus 3.9. So when I have numbers that one's positive and one's negative, I always subtract the smaller one from the bigger one, and then the sign is whatever's on the bigger one. So this one is 3.9 minus 2.4, which gives me 1.5 for that. And obviously you probably could do that in your head as well. I just wanted to show it to you done that way. 3.9 was the bigger number, so that's why it's positive. (14) 4.3 plus -10.2. So at this one, I'm going to do the same type thing that I just did in 12, but I'm going to do the opposite of it. So the bigger number goes on top, so 10.2 minus 4.3. So that ends up being 5.9, but which number was bigger? -10.2, so this is going to be a -5.9. Are we tracking on that part?
Yeah, this is easy.
Okay.
Don't want to get the video treatment though.
Did we?
Last time someone said something was easy.
Yeah. See, 16, -6.5 plus -7.1. What do I do with one like this?
You add them because they're both negative.
Yep, they're both negative, so I add them together. So what do I get when I do that?
I just finished writing it down.
13.6.
Negative.
-13.6, yep, because both are negative.
8? I could say you did that.
7 was a 2.
The decimal
Yeah.
looked like
All right, what do I have to do with something like this? 4 1/5 plus -9 1/2.
Oh, you can convert them into a decimal.
Or you can give them a fraction. Or you can change it. Or you can change both of them to 10 at the bottom. There's multiple ways to do this.
I can make them improper fractions, but I probably will still need a common denominator. I can get a common denominator on the fractions. I can make them a decimal. Which way do y'all want to do it? Decimal?
Yeah, that's
All right. What is 4 1/5 as a decimal then?
4.2.
4.2 plus negative, what's 9 1/2?
Or 9.5.
9.5. So 4.2 plus -9.5 would be? Subtract the smaller from the bigger and keep the sign of the bigger.
Negative 5.3.
negative 5.3. Now, if you're checking your answers in the back, they are going to write this as negative 5 and 3 over 10, like that. I don't care which way you write it, okay? It doesn't make a difference to me. I just want you to know for when you're checking your answers. How about 22? Negative 3 and 3/7 plus negative 14 and 3/4.
Definitely need a common denominator here.
Yeah, right. I could do a decimal, but that's gonna honestly be more work. I would turn them into improper fractions first, get a common denominator, and go from there. So that's what I'm gonna do. How do I turn this into an improper fraction?
So you
7 times.
7 times 3 and then
Wait, no.
21.
3
and then
times 7
21
plus
times
3.
plus 3.
Yep. So what is that?
24.
23.
So it's gonna be negative 24 over 7 plus negative. What do I do over here?
14 times 4 plus 3.
Which is what?
Good question.
I don't know. Mental math.
56.
59.
59 over
160.
4.
I was having to register because I was just trying to do the 4 times the 14, and then I was like, 59. And I was like, oh, add 3.
Oh yeah, add 3. I didn't know.
So then I need to get a common denominator. How do I do that?
This seems like a nightmare.
Change them both to 28.
Both need a denominator of 28, so I need to multiply this one by 4. And I need to multiply this one by 7 over 7. So that's going to be, oh goodness, what is that? Negative 96 over 28 plus negative, oh dear.
Oh, that was crazy.
59 times 7.
This is not fun.
Okay, I'll take that back.
Somebody else get that same number.
I didn't try.
It's probably correct.
I didn't even try multiple.
It's probably right.
Yeah, it's probably right.
Yes.
It
Oh
is.
yeah, it's right.
It's probably right.
Just checking to make sure.
It looks right. It sounds right.
All right, so now I need to combine these fractions. When I add them together, what do I get?
Good question. I don't know.
I have to figure that out. Give me a minute.
413
uh,
plus 96.
how about you subtract?
I'm like,
Oh.
3,
Because they're
10,
different.
13,
No, but the top
7,
numbers are
1,
the same.
3, negative 137 over 28.
They're
Like
both
15.
they're both negatives though, so I need to add them together.
Negative 317.
They're both negative, so I have to add them together.
I'm catching out. No.
So they're both negative, so I need to add the numerators together. So 96 plus 413 is
Negative
It's
509.
5 over 9.
Are they all gonna be like this?
No.
No.
I highly doubt
I
it.
hope not.
Over 28.
over 28. I don't care if you leave your answer this way.
Yeah, I don't want to.
That's fine. If you want to make it a mixed number, the mixed number for this is going to end up being negative 18 and 5/28. So I don't care which way you leave it. I don't mind improper fractions. A lot of people don't like them, but I think they're fine.
So on the one side where you multiply times 4 over 4, and on the other side times 7 times 7, how did you get those?
I just did that to get a common denominator. So since this one had a 4 on the bottom, I multiplied this by 4. And then since this one had a 7 on the bottom, I multiplied this by 7. Because I knew that those numbers would end up giving me a common denominator. Any other questions on that one? I'm not inclined to like give you one that's like that ridiculously hard on a quiz or a test. You might in the homework because, but I'll put it this way. I don't intentionally give the hardest problems on quizzes and tests. Okay, that doesn't necessarily show me that you know what you're doing. Sometimes it happens because as I'm choosing problems, I don't necessarily work them at that moment. So sometimes you may have one, but it won't be Crazy. All right, identify the property being illustrated. So out of these list of properties that I gave you, wherever they went, up here, we're going to be saying for these different problems which property is being used, and that's all you have to do. So 26, -3 plus 3 equals 0. So look at your list of properties. Which one would fit this?
Yes, identity.
Why can't I say my answer?
Well, it looks like it's wrong.
Yeah, Jonathan, that's wrong.
Inverse property. The -3 plus 3, those are opposites. So that would be the inverse property of addition. Yes.
Do we have to put property on it? Or can we just write like inverse?
No, it's fine. You can just write inverse. I abbreviate a lot of things. Some words you just have to be careful how you abbreviate them. 28. Like if I was gonna abbreviate this one, I would probably just write I and V. Prop. Once we get into like with multiplication, this is how I would normally write it. Like in Algebra 2 we do for multiplication and addition, so you have to specify what it is, but that's fine. 28. 9 plus -1 is equal to -1 plus 9. What is this one?
Commutative.
So I usually abbreviate it like that when I'm doing it.
What? 6.
No, I think I wrote the wrong thing down.
All right, 30. X plus 2 in parentheses plus 3 equals x plus in parentheses 2 plus 3.
Associative.
So that's the associative property. So this is the one that it's the most critical you pay attention to your abbreviation. You need to abbreviate it like I did if you're going to abbreviate any of these things. All right, more of just finding the sum. They just have more than just two numbers now. 32, -13 plus 5 plus -7. So what is -13 plus 5?
I gotta figure that out. -7.
-8.
-8, and then -8 plus -7 is
-15.
-15. And I don't mind you doing that in your head. If you need to write it out and do this like piece by piece and say this was -8 plus -7, that's fine too. But I will allow just mental math on these ones. 34. 0.47 plus -1.8 plus -3.8.
Jonathan, you got this one.
I'll try.
I'll take it.
So if I have one like this, I would be inclined to combine both of these negative numbers first. And when I add those together, I would get what? Yep, -5.6. And then I can just do, and I'm going to go over this because I think there were some issues on the last test or quiz or something with this. So 5.6 minus 0.47. We've got to make sure that we stack things up so that they're lined up correctly. Okay, when we're doing adding and subtracting with decimals, we've got to make sure that things are stacked correctly. So take away 1, that's 3, that's 1, that's 5. So 5.13, and then is it positive or negative? Negative. So -5.13 would be the answer for that. All right, are we okay on those? All right. Evaluate the expression for the given value of x. So we have 38, 3 plus x plus, in parentheses, -7. And then they do the little semicolon, x equals 6. So all we're doing is plugging in 6 for x, and then we're doing the same thing we did in the previous problems. So 3 plus 6 plus -7. If I can write. So 3 plus 6 is?
9.
-7 is?
2.
2.
Oh.
Yeah. You're adding with a negative.
You gotta pay attention.
Yeah.
She said -7.
Well, plus a negative, so it's the same as minus. I would never actually write it this way if this wasn't how the book was writing it. I would just do 3 plus 6 minus 7. It means the same thing. 40. 9.6 plus -x plus 2.3. And we're plugging in x equals -8.5. So I've got 9.6 plus, in parentheses, negative times a -8.5 plus 2.3. Now, why did I say this middle piece this way?
Oh.
Could you just. No idea.
Because
The x is negative, but then there's a negative sign next to the x, so you have to add it.
Yes. So I wanted to make sure that we paid attention to the fact that when I'm plugging in the negative x value that they gave me, -8.5, that there's also a negative there. So what happens with a negative times a negative?
it becomes a positive.
Because positive.
Positive. So this is going to become 9.6 plus 8.5 plus 2.3.
20.4.
20.4. And again, if you need to do it step by step, that's fine. If you can do it mentally or whatever, that's totally fine too. All right, that looks like everything for this section that we need. So we're gonna do three through 21, every other odd. Do y'all know what that means?
You skip.
3 skip 5, 7 skip 9, 11 skip 13. And then 27, 29, 31. 35, 37, and 41.